Hey everyone, I'm NOWSKI. Thanks for watching this video. I have decided to make a video on the most stressful part of nurse practitioner school, and that is finding preceptors. So if you talk to anybody who has gone through nurse practitioner school or is in nurse practitioner school, you know, or they most likely have said that finding preceptors for your clinical experiences is one of the most stressful parts. And a preceptor being someone who basically you kind of like when you became a nurse, someone that you follow who teaches you things for your clinical experiences. That is your preceptor, and it's hard to get paired up with a preceptor. And I'm going to talk about the different ways you can go about getting a preceptor in this video, because there are different ways, and some schools help you, some schools don't. And I guess that's the first thing I wanted to talk about was some nurse practitioner schools actually help you find preceptors for your clinical experiences. A lot of your big name universities are going to at least have one person who it's their whole job to try to pair students with preceptors. I know Clemson University had this, other big name universities, they're gonna have this. That doesn't mean that they're always going to find you a preceptor. So when I started out at Clemson, I knew a big draw was they had a connection with a major hospital system, and they implied that they're going to help you find preceptors. That didn't really pan out, except for my final semester, for my final practicum. They did help. And with the one hospital system that the school worked with, it's a big hospital system, has a lot of med students, and I heard the biggest thing is you have these medical practices where apparently they have contracts that they have to take med students, but there was no contract with Clemson University to take nurse practitioner students, so med students kind of got to go first. NP students, if there was availability, some practices were taking them. So I felt bad for the one lady who worked in that department at Clemson, where she was just trying to get students placed, and it was a struggle. So you can count on the school finding you a preceptor spot. If they say that they do, count on maybe they'll find you one throughout your whole nurse practitioner school experience. And I know that's kind of depressing and you hope that's not true, but it most likely will be. So I'm going to give you some ideas for other ways you can go about finding a preceptor. So there is the school, hopefully they're going to do their best to pair you with a preceptor. If you go to an online nurse practitioner program, you definitely have a disadvantage because often you don't have any of that. There's no one that's part of that online school that's going to be helping you find your preceptorship. So then you have to go about these other ways. So outside of your school, I would say the best way is to network where you are. So usually if you're applying for a nurse practitioner school, I think it's a requirement everywhere, you're working as a nurse somewhere. So a lot of nurses are working in hospitals, hospitals that have nurse practitioners that also work there or around there. So my biggest advice is to connect with these nurse practitioners. Not necessarily you don't know them, just go up to them and ask them. I guess you could, but if you've worked there for multiple years, you have a little advantage. You've probably made some relationships with NPs that work around you. I know I worked in like a cardiac ICU for 4 years when I was to the point where I was starting clinicals in NP school. And so I made relationships with nurse practitioners and was able to, let them know, hey, I'm in nurse practitioner school. If, sometime down the road, if I need a clinical placement, are you guys open to that? I will say a lot of hospital systems, or at least I know the one I worked at, had a anti-cold call. You can't contact NPs that work for this hospital system and ask them for preceptor, for people to be your preceptor. You have to go through your school, who has to contact the hospitals clinical placement office who has to then hunt down NPs that want to be preceptors. So that's a lot of times you have to, that's waiting on the school to find you a preceptor spot. And that is not good. I mean, you hope that they did it. My school got me my final practicum placement, but if you're working in your environment and you're around NPs, like, I'm gonna talk to them. I'm gonna ask them, hey, can you precept me? Like, that's gonna happen. You're doing it on the down low if your hospital says you can't do that. But I mean, I think our school, all our professors knew that's what we were doing. They all told us, hey, don't, if they work for this hospital system, they say you're not allowed to call, so don't do it. It makes us look bad. We were all connecting with NPs that we knew. So that is how I got a couple of my clinical placements, just from relationships. I mean, we're allowed to ask people that are our friends, hey, are you open to being a preceptor to a student? What's cool is, depending on the state, and it's something you can tell an NP, that they can actually get a tax break if they precept a nurse practitioner student. I know they do that in South Carolina now, and I'm sure they do it in other states. But outside of the school pairing you with someone, that's my next big thing. And the thing I tell everyone, try to network, try to get to know people, know NPs. If you are friends with someone and their wife or husband or mom or dad is a nurse practitioner, connect with them and talk about it. So that's the second way you can get clinical placement, network with the NPs that you know. All right, the third way is to look up your local nurse practitioner organizations. I think a lot of people don't know that those are out there. There is one, at least like in the area that I live, upstate of South Carolina, and it is called upstatenursepractitioner.com. And it's a little organization that you can join. And you don't even have to join, but there is a button right on their homepage that says, are you looking for a preceptor or need a preceptor? And you click it, you put in a little bit about you and your resume, what you're looking for, the classes you need clinical placements for. And I actually I only got one person that contacted me from that, but that's one way to get these NPs that are out there that are open to taking students, or maybe they want the tax break or something, but they're NPs that look at this, or maybe they get an email from the organization that says, hey, we have these students, are you willing to be a nurse practitioner preceptor? And they pair you up with people. So that is the third way. I would say look at your local organizations wherever you are. Just type in the name of your city in Google. If you're in Boston, just type in Boston Nurse Practitioner Organization or something like that. And you're bound to find some sort of local or regional organization that might possibly connect you with preceptors. So the fourth way is just to Google finding preceptor placement or finding nurse practitioner preceptor. And I just did that in Google and found there's various companies out there that connect you with nurse practitioners. I've not used any of those, but I've seen that they're out there. So I'm not paid by any of those. I saw one was called preceptorlink.com. I can't tell if that's something that you have to pay them to pair you up with a preceptor. All I saw is that you actually submit a resume, tell them about yourself, and apparently they match you up with any preceptors that they can find. So that would be the fourth way. Just Google how to find one, and you could find these websites that possibly match you up with a preceptor. And last, the fifth way that I could think that you could find a clinical placement is to just cold call offices in your area. Again, I think it depends on the organization. I know that the big hospital organization that owns a lot of these medical practices in the area that I live, they do not respond well to cold calls. They want it to go through your university that goes through their clinical placement office. So they didn't even want us contacting that clinical placement office. You have to have a university representative that does that on your behalf. And I get it. they don't want all their NPs getting annoyed by all the students calling their offices all the time, asking for site placement. I mean, semester after semester after semester. So it depends on the organization. If you know this is a private practice, they probably don't care. They don't have that in place. I tried that to one practice and they just said they don't take students. Then I heard other people do that. They just contacted the private practice that they go to for their primary care, and they did get placements that way. So that would be the fifth way. Just cold call a medical practice and go about it that way. So those are the 5 ways that I think a student can find a clinical preceptor. And I would say do it in that order. Number 1, start with your school. They're going to have the best connection, hopefully. And, they do this semester after semester. See if they can pair you with someone. Number 2, start networking where you are. I know that I got one of my placements. I knew my nursing supervisor, her husband was an NP. So she connected me with him and I got a placement. So network where you are, network with the people that you know. 3, look at your local organizations that relate to nurse practitioners and see if you can find placement through that, connect to NPs through that. 4, just Google it, see if there's a website. I like the one I found, preceptorlink.com, and maybe you can get a connection through that. And 5, just cold call some private practices and see if they're willing to take NP students. I know, some people that works out. And that brings up one last point. I know that there are some NP students who have said they have to pay their preceptors to get placement. And I think in areas where it's really saturated with students, this has kind of become common practice. I don't know how I feel about that as an NP. Now I'm like, well, that's cool. You get paid. Yeah. Money talks. We know that whenever there's incentive pay as nurses, that brought in staff to work extra days. So, if it becomes practice that you have to pay an NP to be your preceptor, our school said you should never have to do that. Clemson was against that. I don't know how I feel about that. If that's happened to you, please leave a message in the comments and let us know, is that common practice where you live, that students have to pay their NPs, and how much are they charging? I don't think you should have to do that. I feel like as NPs, we should want to foster the next round of new grad NPs, the next generation of NPs. I think we should just do it out of the kindness of our heart, because we were all students at one point. But that's just to say, you might see that out there. I don't know if it's common practice everywhere or not. It's not in this area, so that was nice. But that might be something you run into. So let me know if you're in school or if you're going through this in the comments. How did you find a preceptor? Was it difficult? What did you go through? Let me know. All right, that's all I have to say about this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in another video. See ya.